I felt like I received was, you and so many others are praying for prosperity when I've given you the greatest technology it's been easier to acquire prosperity than ever before. And so many of you take it for granted and aren't using it.
The things I do and the success I have become about just the doors God has opened for me and the opportunities, and ultimately realizing none of us control basically anything except our own reaction.
If two resumes come across your desk, both of them have equal skill in doing the thing manually. One of them has experience with AI agents, can produce 3x the output of the other one, even if the other one was more skilled at doing the actual thing that is required of the job. Who are you going to hire?
You know, there's so much anxiety, I think, in society today because people are
Preston Zeller, what's up, man?
Baker, super great to be with you. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah. Me too, man. Me too. I think it's going to be a really valuable one. You've got a lot of stuff that we were just talking about before we hopped on here that we can kind of connect on, from faith to SaaS companies you've exited. I want to exit, like all the kind of things that you have done or accomplished or are working on is a lot of the things that I talk about on the show. So I think it's going to be a really cool episode. First off, how would you just tell the people who you are?
Yeah. So name's Preston Zeller. I'm been married about 14 years, man of faith. I have 3 kids from 9 to 12 years old. And my formal pedigree, I guess, was film production, producing. Got out of Hollywood pretty quick and went full on into marketing about 2010. I've been an artist and kind of entrepreneur my whole life. And so grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and a combination of mostly real estate, but other industries as well. And yeah, I think, I've just always had the mentality of growth mentality. That's not something I really had to learn. It was just kind of always the way I functioned.
Yeah.
And so I've always, and I'm a dreamer. So I go, okay, well, what's possible? How can we get there? That's always my thing. But it's, of course, the in-between that's really hard. Coming up with the ideas and pursuing them and persisting through them are 2 very different things. And then, knowing when it's time to pivot or to, just move on entirely to something else, that's a whole other thing as well. And it doesn't mean failure. So, I've had my own successes for sure, but, there's lots I want to accomplish, and I'm always looking for, just making sure I'm on the right path. And I think doing it in a faith-driven way too, I think is important for me, because I think the first part of my career, like a lot of people, was very, I need to feel important. I need to have a title. I need to make a certain amount of money. And, I lost my brother in 2019, about 7 years ago this month. So that maybe earlier than some people led me to really start to kind of question what the heck I was doing. So
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm curious right off the bat, because this has been something that I have been working on a lot in my kind of journey, and just finished a 48-hour fast. We went into a prayer experience in a church group that I'm a part of, and a lot of the stuff that I feel like I struggle with, and I feel like it's pretty rampant in both the industries that I work in, the fitness industry and entrepreneurship, which is not really an industry, but profession, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Something I struggle with is pride, like some of the stuff you alluded to, right? Pride, achieving, this is me, this wasn't God's work, that type of thing. And control. And one of my friends reframed it for me recently. He was like, it's actually not pride and control if I can just tell you that. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's actually fear and doubt. You're afraid something's going to happen that you couldn't stop from happening. That's your control issue. And you doubt that you are what other people perceive you as, or you doubt that you are the thing that you want to be. So you try to go above and beyond to prove that you are this guy or this thing. So how have you, in entrepreneurship and in multiple exits and all the things that you've accomplished, how do you make sure you're not going down the whole vanity path, which entrepreneurship in general, business in general, is a typically pretty vain thing that people get into?
Yeah, that is a really good question. It's funny. my early before I was even like really into my career, I was a performing musician. And I was doing that for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I love music. I still play today, but why what I was after for in performing was and this was all in Southern California, was just self justification. Why am I
Yeah.
here? Look at me. Look at all the stuff I'm doing. Um, Certainly a sense of fame, and I got to see. I worked uh, in and around the Hollywood industry for like 5 years. Got to see firsthand. You could see why people sell their soul in a
Yeah.
literal sense for fame, because that's what they idolize. And yeah, it's interesting what your friend said. It's like where the fear of not becoming something, or being, I guess, identified as some kind of person you don't want to be, whatever the case is. And after actually I'll say this, after my brother passed, I realized that there are vows we make in life, and if someone's just kind of glossing over that word, don't, because a vow is a very it's something that guides your life, whether you realize it or not. And most of us make vows early in life that are family related. So, like for me, I grew up with a brother who was, older brother, and so there was some typical stuff there, but he was also an addict. So there's a certain amount of like, hey, I'm going to prove him wrong, and I'm going to just be more successful than him. And then there's some things with my dad where he kind of gave up early in life, and so I made this vow to like never let an excuse sort of slow me down. I'm gonna
Yeah.
outwork what I saw there too. And it's this whole thing of what's your identity. And it's interesting, like, okay, let's say you work in a corporate job, which I have a lot, and they just let you go because whatever, budget cuts, you name it. And people feel so lost. I mean, there's loss in the sense of like, oh crap, my source of income's cut off. But then there's loss in the sense of I was so wrapped up in thinking this thing defined me, and social media has just exacerbated all that.
Yep.
And so for me, the way I've learned to navigate is really going, what's my identity in Christ? Because that is my guidepost. There's no amount of work I'm going to do that's going to make me anything except just maybe more of my sinful nature. So I'm going to lean into who Christ is and stand on his shoulders and what he's done that I could never do. And that's a game changer, because then the things I do and the success I have become about just the doors God has opened for me and the opportunities, and ultimately realizing none of us control basically anything except our own reactions.
Yeah.
And the more there's so much anxiety, I think, in society today, because people are trying to control the outcome of something that they really didn't have much control over to begin with. Again,
Yeah.
except your own reaction to things, and your how you live your life, your healthy lifestyle, whatever the case is, how you just approach any kind of venture. So anyways, that's some of my thoughts there.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good because Christ does lay out exactly who we are, what we are, and so that should be the kind of blueprint for how we look at ourselves and how we're supposed to live. And that's been a lot of my conversations recently, is just figuring out and understanding that whatever like level of, I'm reading, for example, Deuteronomy right now. I'm trying to
Mm.
read the whole Bible this year, and so I'm in the Old Testament right now. It's
Yeah.
some tough going in like Leviticus and some of the,
Yeah.
some of
Some of the lineage stuff, you're like,
those areas. Yeah, lineage
Yeah.
stuff, the rules where it's just like crazy rules
Uh-huh.
back to back to back to back to back. I'm in Deuteronomy right now, so we're almost kind of out of that section, but I just read the other day the part where Moses is giving his kind of final address before he passes away,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about they're about to enter the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do right by God, like you will be, this is the land flowing in milk and honey, you'll be super prosperous, you'll achieve a bunch of success, your flocks will multiply, your families will multiply, like I'll give you everything that I promised. But he says, like, be careful, because the second that you start to like basically gain a lot and achieve a lot, you start to attribute that from your own works and not from
Mhm.
God. And he's like,
Mhm.
that is the part where that's the point where you're most valuable or most vulnerable
Mhm.
is whenever you start to think, oh, this is mine. And so that's been a good reframe for me is, well, none of it was mine in the first place. Like God's
Yeah.
just letting it flow through me, or God's
Yeah.
just letting me hold on to it for a little bit. So I try to remind myself of that too.
Yeah, dude, it's funny because I wrote a song like I don't know, probably 10 years ago, and then just put out a version of it on Spotify called The Honey. And it's about that exact idea, like where they say, hey, come get the honey, but rest in me. But my natural inclination is to eat the honey till I'm sick. And
Hmm.
I think that sickness is kind of what you're talking about, where you go, oh, I've become deluded in where this honey comes from, what it's supposed to be, and ignoring that. Yeah, it's all a gift and borrowed at the same
Yeah.
time. So yeah, and I agree with what you're saying there. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me through kind of you got your start. You said you worked in corporate. I know you've exited multiple companies. You were in fractional leadership for a while. Like, how did you get your start in this whole world? Talk to me through your path.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, 2010, I got out of entertainment. Prior to that, like I said, I was in like producing for film. And really, producing for film, that could mean, different things. But essentially you're like kind of on the business and orchestration side of making a film happen. I worked across other roles as well. But 2010 was an interesting time frame to get into, I think, online marketing, because it was right at the sort of youth stage of a like early SaaS, I would say, SaaS in the
Yeah.
way that we know it today. Marketing technology in general, that this sort of notion that you could track online activities and create automations out of it, and all those kinds of things. It's really where like HubSpot came out of. SEO is still very young, kind of wild westish of that um, you know, channel, and then paid, and just everything that was emerging around that time. But I was I knew to like lean into what I was good at in a way, but also I was going to like just learn as much as I could. I mean, I think because I didn't have this formal background in, I didn't get an MBA or business degree or anything like that. I was exposed to those kinds of concepts for sure, but I really want to understand how to run an online business, and so it was in info products. I worked with course creators and all that kind of stuff early on in San Diego, and there's it's some, back then at least, it was somewhat of like the mecca of that whole
Yeah.
industry. Tony Robbins came out of there, but a lot of the
Yep.
sort of new age course sellers were there and stuff. And so it was just, how do you create funnels? How do you create, VSLs, video sales letters? How do you create these insanely long landing pages that convert? And there is so much, Optimizely was around, and I could heat
Yeah.
map and scroll videos, and just these things started coming online. You're like, wow, this is amazing. I could actually like understand the behavior, the psychology behind what people are doing. And just I kept working across different industries, mostly in like a small agency setting.
Okay.
Had my own agency at one point that was nothing to write home about. It was, basically I'd ramp up staff when I needed it, contractors rather, and do
Yeah.
bigger jobs and that kind of stuff. Eventually, somewhere along the line, I was just obsessed with, I want to have a SaaS product. And so I co-founded one, and that just basically turned into a ton of fundraising efforts, and then like kind of product development with this team in Ukraine. Did that for about a year, and eventually just like left that and was so just kind of jaded by everything. And I'm like, what do I do? So 2016, I ended up at Zoom Info, which was Discover.org then.
Yep.
And so, for those who don't know, they're publicly traded now, but they were really kind of a pioneer in the sort of business, contact space.
Yeah.
and
Scraping, contact scraping, things like that.
yeah, and kind of the intelligence signals behind it, if you will, those sort of the predictive
Mhm.
signals and whatnot. So I joined when that company was like 30 million, like 3.5 years later, it was about 300 million. That was, you know, organic and inorganic growth, right? But that time was insane because they're on a crazy trajectory, and I worked in the marketing department, overseeing digital marketing and growth, and then eventually towards the end, I was chief of staff for the CMO, so I'd act as a proxy for her. But just being able to see what that took, and everything that I could be involved with there, especially when it came to like huge, go to market launches, right? Research, working with product, and I actually really got started. I started working with the product team to sort of uh, productize marketing assets, if you will, things that we, to some degree, the like vibe marketing things that we would
Yeah.
call today, but they weren't as easy to do. You had to work with a software team or developer at least. And so the like a programmatic SEO directory build out, which we Discover.org had our own. Eventually worked with the Zoom Info one, which is really big. That
Mhm.
still is out there. And again, I think just seeing what it took from particularly a marketing perspective, but again, like I I think a glossed over thing when you look at a title is like what people actually do in a in
Yeah.
a in a role. And I worked across like every department there because I started our video department sort of reluctantly. My CMO at the time was like, "Hey, you have a film background. We should do videos." I was already running digital marketing. I'm like, "No, I don't want another job."
Yeah.
And it just happened. You know, parlayed that into more pay at some point. But because I was working on like the video side of things, I started working with across more departments. So I had to go work with sales more. I had to go work at the research department more. I worked with product more, just everyone.
Yeah.
And along the way, you're just relationship building. And that can get lost in you just like executing on your work, whatever. That made a big difference. And so eventually, yeah, I went on to another company called A Cloud Guru. So it was ed tech for the cloud industry. There, people were getting AWS certified and Azure certified, that kind of stuff. There for about a year and a half. They, huge run up when I was there, partially because of COVID, and Accenture and big companies were investing into that. And then I took a step back into more like the ops world because I really wanted to get my hands dirty in what like the inner workings of a CDP and event taxonomy, and how do you really orchestrate data in a way to be able to use it across like really sophisticated systems.
Mhm.
Um, Left there, and then that's where I spent about 3.5 years at this real estate data company, and as chief growth officer. So I was advising the CEO, and then also working with the founders and across our whole C-suite team. And I oversaw like all go to market, so sales, marketing, rev ops, customer support for a short period of time. And that was a wild trip too, because I joined early 2022, right when interest rates started going up, and we were coming out of a heyday. When I think a lot of people experienced this, where once the like sort of handbrake got pulled on the economy, it was like, oh, all the things you thought worked that you didn't have to pay it, and things you didn't have to pay attention to, they started to become a lot more important. And so that 3.5 years is kind of a process of that. We launched a data product in the meanwhile that went from nothing to about 3.5 million ARR while I was there, and so they've grown it
Wow.
quite a bit since then. And but also like trying to like not let other products die because one reason or another. And of course, none of them did. We sold a couple of them for quite a bit, but at the same time, we had to be very um, discerning with what we did in product, teams, all that kind of stuff. And so, last thing I'll say before you ask a follow up question is just that this whole time, I was there. ChatGPT came online that first year, and you're like, okay, cool. It's kind of a glorified Google. And then all the other tooling things and sequencing and, N8N and all the variations of that tool and then Claude Code and those things started coming about more and maturing over that time period. And I started to really connect the dots on where do these tools become a real net positive to improve internal processes or create software that really is going to fulfill the need for the foreseeable future until we need to go invest 50K into some enterprise solution, things
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yeah. I mean, it sounds pretty, you obviously have a lot more extensive, like experience than I do, but as far as your view on GPT and then seeing some of these other tools come out, it sounds like we probably had a realization about AI around the same time. For me, it was, I don't remember the exact video that I had watched, but I'd seen something on like my first video that I'd seen on like agentic AI. I don't remember exactly what it was going over, but it kind of flipped a switch for me on like, oh, I can't ignore this thing. And
mhm.
this is coming and this is going to be really bad for a lot of people. How do I make it not as bad or actually like you said, a net positive for myself, my loved ones, my employees, my company? Like, how do I make it? I heard Gary Vee talk about, hey, I'm not looking at AI as how can I cut off half of my employees and stay at the same revenue level? I'm looking
Mm.
at it as how can I double my revenue with the same exact team that I have now? And
Mhm.
so that's a big part of how I've tried to look at it is, right now we have 26 employees at at AR and how can we double or go to 5 million or 10 million in ARR and what we're trying to build with the same team, just everybody's AI enabled and just way more productive, right? Instead of having to double the
Mhm.
team to get double the revenue, that's just a lot sexier to double the revenue with the same amount of team. So I had that realization. I realized, in our industry and the customers that we serve, they're typically pretty far behind in tech.
Mhm.
It's online personal trainers, online fitness coaches,
Mhm.
and they just want to coach clients. They don't
Mhm.
necessarily wanna, like, do all the research that a tinkerer or a nerd like you or I might
Yeah.
wanna be interested in and kinda have fun playing with.
Mhm.
Uh, and so when I discovered vibe coding and everything and all the things that are possible there, I immediately started just tinkering. And,
Mhm.
we're building this company and we did 2 last year and yeah, my entire day is I'm my function is COO of the
Mhm.
company. And I knew that I couldn't take away time from the day to work on these things or tinker with these things. So I started, going home and, 5 to 9 every day doing and weekends just tinkering like what can I build with this stuff? Like what are some silly things I can build? What are some and I ended up building a like vibe coding the first version. We've since hired developers because we had a successful like private launch, but ended up vibe coding a product just nights and weekends last year that we launched that is now one of our quickly growing like completely bespoke software that we built from scratch. I vibe
Nice.
coded the first version of it. We did a successful like we did multiple six figures in a two private launches just to our customer base.
Nice.
And it was like I'm not a code. It was like a massive switch for me and for some of the people that watch me do it. Of I'm not a coder. I can't code anything from scratch. I know enough logic to be dangerous, but I can definitely type to AI. And I built this entire platform from scratch,
Mm.
presented it to people. People saw enough value to where a whole bunch of them bought. And then now we have self-funded this roadway to launching this thing to the public and launching an even cooler product than what people bought.
Nice.
So it was just kind of like a whoa moment. It's like an aha moment for me of I've seen people talk about vibe coding these and getting like crazy results and everything, and then doing it. And I don't know if you did that with Psalmlog or what you did there, but it's just incredible what we have access to at our fingertips now.
Yeah, I was talking about this with someone earlier today. Just since the beginning of the year, how much that has changed, and I think a lot of people came back from Christmas time period, the holiday time period, and open claw, what that turned into
I've
was a
got one
huge
sitting
thing.
right next to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Got a Mac
So,
Mini running an OpenClaw right next to me.
so what that turned into, and then the new
Yep.
models getting released, it's like, whoa. What got me more open my brain about things was, December 2025. No, sorry, 26, 24. Getting my years mixed up. Yeah, December 2024. I started using Replit.
Yep.
Actually, guy I worked with at ZoomInfo. He's one of their heads of sales,
Okay.
and so I kept seeing him talk about Replit. I'm like, oh, what is this? I just hadn't really paid attention to the whole vibe coding thing, and I just took all my background and started building stuff. I'm like, there's a lot of potential here. I actually think like the whole, I think vibe coding term though has gotten a little like, um, I guess become a catch-all for someone who just can't code. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, it sort of came out of this notion of someone not really paying attention to what was getting built and just like prompting and accepting whatever got thrown at you.
Yeah.
But the process has become so much more collaborative and sophisticated now too, where you're like, okay, you're really there's a lot more thought going into it than let me just throw spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah.
Um, so it's what did you use in your guys's sort of beta alpha version?
Yeah. So I started with the first version of the first video I saw on vibe coding at all was RPN, Roberto Nixon. I don't know if you follow him on
Mm-mm.
Instagram, but I saw him use
Mm-hmm.
Bolt.new. And so that was the first one that I just did like a free trial on and just threw some stuff at it. And I was like, holy cow, like this is
Mm.
possible. Um, and then as I got more and more into it and kind of reached I feel like limitations of that, Claude Code was really starting to get talked about a lot on a lot of the tech podcasts that I listened to. And so then I switched to straight up, VS Studio
Mm-hmm.
with Claude Code installed
Yep.
as an extension and just running it in there, checking the code as it go. And I actually had, whenever it was just me, before we brought in some developers and had the cash to kind of front load that, I had Claude Code on the front end, coding and pushing like PRs,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had a program called Code Rabbit on the
Mm-hmm.
back end that lived exclusively in GitHub, and it was reviewing the PRs and then I had even trained it that, "Hey, I'm vibe coding this whole thing, so
Mm-hmm.
don't give me, like, specific spots to go change code or tell me how to change it. Just write me a prompt for the vibe coding agent so I can take that back." And so then it was reviewing it as, like, a senior dev
Mm-hmm.
kind of review, analyst, and it was giving me vibe coding like, prompts to take back to Claude Code to fix different issues or red flags that it saw, whether it was security or things that might break or a button that doesn't match or anything like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
was using Claude Code on the front end, Code Rabbit on the back end, and that's how we launched our product, Check-ins Pro. Now we have developers working on it too. And of course, they're vibe coding to make themselves more efficient as well and faster.
Well, when you see, I mean, a year ago it was, you know, well, code's pretty good, but there's still a lot of mistakes. Like people weren't taking the code seriously. Then we ended last year with all these seasoned developers, like the founder of Ruby on Rails, going, "Yeah, I haven't written code in a while. It's Claude
Yeah.
Code's doing it." And then these new models came out at the beginning of the year, and then well 4.5, and then 4.6, and then
Yeah.
Codex is at like I don't know 5.3 or whatever.
Yeah.
But and it's really interesting to see how the feedback loop works and what it asks you to, you know, just say, "Hey, does this plan look right to you?" Or, just ask you the questions. And the fact they made Claude Cowork too, just with Claude Code. So, but
It's
it's like but people who aren't paying any attention to this, the best analogy I could come up with, because a lot of people that have no idea they're using free Chat GPT. I'm like, you're using a '95 Honda Civic,
yes.
and in AI world, and then people like us who are using the most advanced models, it's like, okay, I walked in and there was a 1,000 horsepower Ferrari in my garage. And then I got into the car the next day and it was 5,000 horsepower, but just like kind of looked the same, you know?
Mhm.
So these advancements are pretty crazy.
It is. It really is. And it's funny to kind of go back into the faith stuff, but along the lines of what we're talking about. I as a part of the fast and a part of like the devotion and the things that we're going through leading up to this prayer experience, a big focus was on having like two-way conversations with God, like leaving
Mm-hmm.
room for him to respond to you and talk to you.
Yeah.
And one revelation that I had is I was leaving like no silence in my day. So,
Mm.
driving to the office, to our HQ in the mornings, like I've got podcasts going or I'm on the phone. While I'm working out, I got podcasts going or I'm on the phone. Driving back to the house to let the pup out at lunch, like podcasts or music. Then driving home at the end of the day, podcasts or calls or music. I get home, watching a Netflix show or a YouTube video on a training of something or something new thing that came out, like just inputs nonstop,
Mm-hmm.
nonstop. And so whenever I was sitting in silence trying to just listen for like what does God have to say to me, the first two things that came in was be still, just the words be still
Mm-hmm.
and meditate. So like leave silence in your day so that I can actually speak to you and communicate with you. And I was like, okay, cool, heard. And another thing that came in that I thought was so interesting the more I reflected on it, because I've always felt like a conviction, like I said at the beginning, to start to share like, hey, there's this technology and it's going to be really bad if you don't just start using it. Like
Mm.
even if you do just start talking to the free version of ChatGPT, you can't interact with this tech and not have an aha moment where it's like, what if it just answered that quickly? What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I did? And that's how the whole thing starts.
Mm-hmm.
But the story of like the man in the flood, do you that like drowned in the flood, it's you'll recognize it whenever I start telling it. But basically it's like the crazy natural disaster. There's like a hurricane or a tsunami and this guy's like house is flooded and the water's rising and
Mm.
he's sitting on top of his roof. And at first like some people in a rowboat drive like row by and they're like, "Hey, you need to come with us. It's super dangerous." And he's like, "No, I've been praying to God, like God will save me." And
Uh,
then some people on a rescue boat come by and motorized boat and they're like, "Hey, we're here to rescue you. Like, come with us." And he's like, "No, I'm praying to God. God's gonna save me." And then a rescue
yeah.
helicopter. "Hey, man, come with us." And he's like, "No, God's gonna save me. Like, I'm good." And then the guy inevitably the water rises, the guy drowns, and first thing he asks God when he gets to heaven is like, "What happened? I thought you were gonna save me." And he's like, "I sent you a rowboat, a rescue boat, and a helicopter, and
Yeah.
you didn't take them. What else do you want me to do?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like that story popped into my head, which I thought was interesting. But then I heard and what I felt like I received was you and so many others are praying for prosperity when
Mm.
I've given you the greatest technology it's been easier to acquire prosperity than ever before. And
Mm.
so many of you take it for granted and aren't using it.
Mm.
And so I was like, whoa, okay, I need to start talking about AI even more than I currently am. And I think that's something that people have to realize is people are creating every single day 6 and 7 figure solo businesses
Mm.
by themselves using this technology, whether that be creating their own SaaS product or spinning up OpenClaw instances and agents that are acting as if they're an entire 24/7 working employee and staff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is incredible we have at our fingertips. And I just can't so many people like how do you view this shift working and happening? Because I feel like so many people are taking it for granted or still using it as a glorified Google.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to be, I just don't see a way that it's not so bad for so many people.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly, it, you know, Nathaniel Whitmore. I think that's his name. He has the AI Daily Brief podcast, but he covered off on like sort of another article because there was the something big is coming. I think, yeah, yeah, something big is happening. Did you read that post from Matt Schumer?
No.
Okay, so yeah, go look it up after this. Had 84 million views on X.
Wow.
So, and Matt Schumer's point was basically, you know, hey, I'm going to write this long note to let everyone know what's actually happening in AI. And,
Yeah.
he covers a bit of that, like, free chat GPT is, this old model, blah, blah, blah. And it ends up in this encouragement of just go use this stuff and stop thinking that it's going to go away and not affect you. But Nathaniel brought up a different article that was kind of a response, and I forget the way he phrased it, but it was basically like what people tend to do is just extrapolate out the now and say, oh man, here's what it's going to become based on what's happening right now, but like all the negative aspects versus going, here's what's possible. And I'm actually going to bring this up because it's such a good one. What?
Yeah, please do.
Because I was just talking about this. Okay, so let's see if I can find it. Let me cut out this silence.
Oh, good.
But it was basically like, okay, internet thought, it would wipe out, all the clerical jobs. Let me find the actual thing. Hold on. What?
You're all good. I'm marking this so we can cut it out after.
Okay. This will be good for your audience. Okay, I think this is some semblance of what I was looking for. So, yeah, okay, what like historical technology changes creating jobs, right? If we go back to the automobile era, of course, we replaced horse-drawn carriages, but then the automobile industry created jobs in manufacturing, road construction, gas stations, repair shops, insurance. Computer revolution in the 70s and 80s, from typewriters to computers, created roles for IT technicians, software engineers, computer trainers, data analysts. The internet, of course, made jobs in web development, digital marketing, cybersecurity. We're all kind of a product of that. Smartphone era, right? You have mobile and cloud technology, app developers, UX designers, social media managers, cloud architects. What's AI and automation doing? Creates new roles like an AI integration specialist, machine learning engineers, prompt engineers, I guess IoT developers.
Mm-hmm.
So the point being, like, a lot of this AI stuff is going to create more jobs. Now, I think what you're hinting at is like the skills gap, but I think
It's massive.
yeah, and I think what seems to be what we're in the seed of right now are the people who are probably going to benefit the most from it. But does it mean everyone else is kind of like screwed? I don't think so, but hopefully not.
Yeah. I hope not too, dude. I would love for that to be the case. it's just gonna be wild because it is gonna be we're already seeing it, right? Like, these big
Mhm.
corporations are laying off people by the tens of thousands. Seems like every couple of months we see Facebook or Meta or Microsoft or sorry, Meta or Microsoft or some of these other big companies are doing mass layoffs, just replacing with AI or automation, and they kind of do that. Now, some of it could be there's a case for a lot of it, and in a lot of cases, is like they just had a lot of bloat and they're using AI to like saying that it's AI when it's really just like they needed a good excuse to on share look good to shareholders. There could be some of that stuff, right?
Yeah,
But
there was over hiring that occurred at some point. Well,
exactly.
okay, here's one thing that I've been thinking about bakers.
Okay.
Okay, so in bigger companies, like the bigger a company gets, there's more layers of management that get built in. And part of that is like you're making it easier to maybe swap someone out because people inevitably leave. The other thing is you want to give people a clear idea of like, hey, what's the ladder here? How do I get promoted? Because people eventually will go, hey, it's been 2, 3, 4 years and I haven't moved
Yeah.
at all. You're hiring advantageous people at a high growth company, all that kind of stuff. And so those rungs get built in, or if you're somewhere big like Microsoft or whatever, you just move to they bounce you around between departments and there could be benefit in that too. But I think the thing I could kind of see happening is the way, like the sort of legacy way, let's call it that, of structuring a company is going to really fundamentally change. And even, the whole notion of making double the revenue with like same employees. The
Yeah.
challenge there is it it's so there's an assumption that your existing employees can actually like level up to that point
Use
of
AI.
being effective enough, right? And that's what
Exactly.
I've talked to so many people there where especially in bigger companies, let's say 500 plus, but even lower than that is even 250 in employee count, where of course leadership maybe invests in AI tools and they're like, hey, here it is, go be more productive. Not realizing like the upskilling that has to happen,
Uh-huh.
or just what are the expectations of you using this thing, because it's not like some mystical wand that is just gonna make you better. I mean, it's funny because even as technical as I am, and I would consider myself having a pretty elastic learning ability. Man, I got to sit with it and go, all right, well, here's the thing. Let me really kind
Figure
of
it out.
pressure test it against these ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a whole new way of thinking. I think that's kind of what you and I were, or maybe circling around to, is the way of thinking seems to be really different than just like, oh, there's this niche tool that solves this very specific job and I'm going to get it. And even when it comes to like N8N, I've been trying to figure out, I'm like, why don't I just build it in Claude code and not even have to use N8N, because N8N
Exactly.
does bother the heck out of me.
Yeah,
Uh,
I cut out NAN pretty quickly for other
yeah,
tools that were just, like, easier to look at or easier to use.
yeah. Not as one my friend puts it, the N8N is very deterministic.
Mhm.
Um, eh, Not to mention how many people just rip off templates on there and pass them off as their own.
Oh,
I've had
yeah.
I've had that happen to myself. I'm like, hey, it's a template I built. This guy's saying, it's if you comment billionaire, he's gonna give it to you.
Yeah, send you a billion templates.
Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a skills gap. And the scary thing is this AI revolution is happening so much faster than the previous revolutions or level ups, like, so
yeah.
much faster. It's, the curve is way more expedited, and so there's a lot of people in the workforce right now. I mean, it comes down to you wanna think that everybody thinks about it like what we're talking about is you wanna keep the same people, you don't want it to replace people, you want it just be more efficient. But the simple problem whenever it comes, and most businesses are going to make this decision is like if two resumes come across your desk, both of them have equal skill in doing the thing manually. One of them has experience with AI agents can produce
Mm,
3x the output of the other one, even if the other one was more skilled at doing the actual thing that is required of the job,
yeah.
who are you gonna hire for the same exact salary? You're gonna hire the person that can do 3x the output for the same price rather than the person who's gonna come in and only be able to do 1x. Like, that's
Yeah.
gonna be an unacceptable output is just 1x, and right now, it's like 1x is great. If you hire somebody that's got 1x output, like, awesome, when most people are like, 50% or 70% or
Mhm.
80%, it's like 1x is gold standard, but now it's gonna be like, who can I hire that's 3 or 5x because they're
Mhm.
just good at utilizing this tech, these tools? And I think most companies are gonna make that decision, as they should. Not saying they shouldn't make that decision,
Mhm.
but it's like there is a skills gap, there is a learning curve that people have gotta be tinkering in their free time. If even if
Mhm.
their job right now is not AI enabled or not giving them space to learn it or trying to teach it to them, people have to tinker and people are busy. And I don't know that a lot of people are gonna tinker and it's just I mean, even Elon himself, I saw a video of him the other day at some summit, and he said by December of 2026, the role of developer won't exist. And, like, I think that's probably a little aggressive,
Yeah.
but I'm like, Elon's typically I mean, he's pretty eccentric, but he's typically decently good at predicting these types of things.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw another post that was they were talking about the Y economy, like there's gonna be a big split in the economy, and it's people that are learning AI right now are in our like you and I and some of the people that listen to this podcast will be the people that manage AI, and then
Mhm.
there will be the people that are managed by AI.
That's
Like,
a
that'll
wild
be the
that's a
split.
wild thing. Yeah.
I know.
You get to the point of, oh, guy, yeah, there's yeah, the a 24-hour Lumbergh,
Yeah,
just telling you what to do.
and it's crazy. It's like that's a real I could really see that happening, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know where this thing heads, and it's the the thing that people should take solace in, and I think you probably feel the same way I do. Every doom and gloom, bad possible scenario, there is equally the other side of the coin is equal. The
Yeah.
opportunity, the excitement, like how cool this thing is, how much you can do with it, how much you can create and build and acquire. All of that is equally as beautiful on the other side of things. So take solace in that, and I think that's probably a good segue into what you have built with Psalmlogs. Maybe you can
Mhm.
kind of talk about how you've built this and what your goal was with this creation of yours.
Yeah. So Psalmlog is, basically a way to get 24/7 personalized biblical advice. It is, a biblical life coach. Um, it is based around AI for sure. And, I think I'll tell you a little bit what led me into this. This is about January 25. I had actually come recently off a transaction that fell through to buy an AI startup. And in the process, got to learn a lot about just different AI techniques from the guy who was I was trying to buy this company from. And there's concepts, these were just things I was like, oh, kind of eyes open to that. And that fell through. And I'm like, okay, well, now that I know about these concepts, what else could I apply it to? And this notion of journaling came up. I was actually listening to a podcast and this, idea of like AI being applied to journaling came up. And I'm like, well, I don't really want to, I don't want to solve that in a broad scope sense, but I do
Yeah.
understand that from a Christian perspective, people keep reflective journals, prayer journals, that kind of thing. And really just the basic premise that, uh, people who keep journals, they never go back and read them.
Hmm.
And meanwhile, you have a massive, basically reflective database that you could pull a lot of insights out of. I mean, tons of things I was doing was research oriented, using large amounts of text and
Yeah.
finding different things in there. So it started as that. I hired a team overseas, and it started as a mobile app, and I knew AI tools were nowhere near being able to handle a mobile app at that time.
Yeah.
I still think if you're going to do something really nuanced in mobile, There's some things you can do. I don't know. I don't think you can handle quite everything. But anyway, so came out with the first version in August, which 8 months feels like an eternity at this point to launch anything.
It does.
Came out with the first version. I had it very dialed in with like analytics and all this kind of stuff, and I was watching first users use it. And I went back to the drawing board to not back to the drawing board, but I went back to I commissioned a study on with 200 Christians, anonymized ones. So did it. Did it. Just they didn't know who I was. They didn't know who the company was. About a 40 question survey, and I wanted to understand, well, how much are people spending on the kind of spiritual help tools? What are the problems they're really trying to solve? I mean, I was just validating, hey, am I crazy or am I in the right direction? And I realized that what I had built was essentially solving a much bigger problem. And one of those problems being that people, especially believers, but even seekers, they know the Bible's answers. They don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And, as we're talking about the theme of this episode in many ways, the pace of life is just so different now. Whether it's news, social media, your career, family, all the things, right? It's just fast. And so, it's oftentimes like we want help like now. We want reflection. Yeah. You have things that are going to wake you up at 2 a.m. And that's what I realized Psalmlog was more so addressing. One of the things it was. So kind of started to evolve the mobile app. And then I really had to start trying to tackle like, okay, well, it was a bit one-dimensional at first. The issue of personalization, to really start to go, okay, take into account where you're at in your faith journey. How old are you?
Yeah.
Why are you using this app? What's the severity of the issue you're actually presenting? In a similar way, like, a biblical counselor might be able to meet with you on and meet at that level. And so it's just been a continuous round of testing, iteratively improving on it. And knowing too that like the younger generation, Gen Z, like is just has a very different mindset, and the younger side of Gen Z is a very different mindset about like just approaching spirituality than the other generations do. So like for a college audience, making sure could be equally as effective as someone who's in their 50s. And combining a lot of different like AI concepts in there. And it's been awesome to see people give feedback to me directly, not in their entries, but like say where it's helped them. And I'll say one of the other kind of like meta topics that or issues that I'm looking to solve is not, for one, not replacing anyone. Sometimes people go, oh, you're trying to replace pastors. I'm like, no, it doesn't replace anyone. It's actually fundamentally filling a gap that exists, a void in people's lives where they may need these answers quickly, but more importantly, isolated in one of two ways. Isolated in the sense that you're surrounded by people who are not going to be amenable to a change in mind about the way you're living. Or the other one may be that you are just actually like truly isolated. You do not have friends, family around, whatever. And so if there's a way to basically proactively be able to pull you back into community, whether that's through like grief share, if you're going through grief, whether that's celebrate recovery, if you're dealing with addiction, those kind of things eventually get you into a church that works, then great. But so those are some of the things, and it's just it's combining two incredibly difficult subjects, right? Yes. It's combining spirituality with technology and AI. But the thing is, it's already happening. People are going to whatever ChatGPT, they're going to Google to try to figure out these problems. And I don't want to be the guy who does it. I'm trying to facilitate the proliferation of a tool that I know is being built with the right mindset and approach that is going to be theologically appropriate. And yeah, anyways, so
That's awesome. No, I think you're to just hit on the point of what you're talking about there at the last couple of minutes is it is two things that people don't picture as going together. But like I personally, to help understand things better, I've asked Claude biblical questions, right? Or GPT biblical questions just to understand something or find a specific verse or things like that. So the fact that one can be built by a believer for that specific purpose and then loaded with all of the kind of data that you've gathered talking to real Christians anonymously and gathering just, like you said, these studies that you've been doing. I think that's extremely valuable. And I think it is modernizing. I mean, there was a lot of people that were for or against the YouVersion Bible app, for example, because it's
mhm.
like taking the Bible, like all those purists were think like Bible has to be these pages with the gold thing on the outside and all that.
Right,
And the YouVersion Bible app's the biggest app in the world, and that's brought the
dude.
gospel to more people more frequently than probably anything else
Yeah,
ever created.
yeah,
So like it's modernizing these things so that the religion, our faith, and every can reach more people in more ways how they are currently consuming information.
yeah,
Whenever everyone is mostly reading books, that made a lot of sense for the Bible. I still think everyone should get into the physical word as well. Don't get me
yeah, yeah,
wrong, but
yeah,
when everyone was mostly reading books, that was where the Bible was at. Whenever and it used to be on scrolls, right? It used to be on like all it's been passed down in many forms in many ways. And there's a ton of different translations as well in terms of how to reach people. But the YouVersion Bible app made it more accessible to people than ever before, translated in more
mhm.
language than ever before. And now something like this, I think this is a perfect kind of segue or next step into how people consume information now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, look, you're always gonna have some, like, group of believers who are, view themselves as, like, gatekeepers to, like,
Yes.
preserving the word of God. It's like, okay, God's word has survived for thousands of years and been translated by the right people so that it's in, our hands now. And God's not going, oh my gosh, AI was created. It's going to destroy my message. It's like,
Yeah.
that's, it's a tool that's been allowed to be created. And, you mentioned like the printing press basically, or scrolls. But like
Yeah.
you gotta figure, I think this is a safe assumption that there are people when the printing press was first coming around, they're like, this guy Gutenberg is creating something. It's gonna really kind of screw up our control of their scrolls and manuscripts that the elite have. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know if we should be printing Bibles. It's gonna make people read it on their own and start thinking for themselves. I mean, yeah, there
Exactly.
had to have been people doing that. I don't and so there's always going to be people with objections. You familiar with the book Crossing the Chasm?
I'm not.
So it just basically talks about I think it's 5 or 6. I think it's 5. But the different stages of adoption for a company, right?
Hmm.
And so, or a product. Yeah, it's 5. So on the chasm is the place between like early adoption and mass market, but there's always this laggard group that are the skeptics. Like you're gonna have that in everything.
Yes.
And so I respect that viewpoint for sure. But yeah, and again, it's like I already know there's Christian apps out there that are being made by people who also have Hindu apps, who have Muslim apps. Like those are
Yeah.
very different viewpoints. They just are.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure where the creator is coming from of that, but um, you're not going to, you wouldn't find me creating an app for any other faith. I'll tell you that. I
Yes.
wouldn't know where to go.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's
but yeah,
important. Intentions behind anything are important, especially with AI. I mean, we saw a lot of the things at the very beginning when Gemini came out with like its image gen models, and
right.
it's like,
Yeah.
hey, show me a picture of the founding fathers, and it's like an Asian woman and a Native American, like George Washington's, all these different races with different things and everything. It's like,
Well, they had like
okay,
black
we all
Nazis
know.
in that. Like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
was
It's like,
wild. You're like, whoa, you guys went off the rails here.
yeah, exactly. So intention in these guardrails in the initial training is really important in terms of who is actually pulling the strings behind it. So it's great to hear that you're taking that into consideration, and also you're talking to people. It sounds like you're spending a good amount of time kind of democratically sourcing this information and how it can be valuable, and really thinking through how you're training your models and in what way, and how the person's actually going to use the thing
Mm-hmm.
versus just, I think a lot of software entrepreneurs or creators will put something out that they think is cool and then be like, why is no one buying it? And it could be the coolest thing in the
Yeah.
world to you. But if the marketplace doesn't want to use it, doesn't have fun using it, doesn't think it's valuable on their end, does not matter. There's a lot of smart people that have built a lot of really cool things that never went anywhere. And then somebody
Yeah.
good at sales went in and was like, you just need to tweak this one thing and it pops off, you know?
Dude, okay, so that brings me to a good sort of pivot point because in the product. So because I started this out actually up until recently the app was voice only.
Okay.
So someone I and again, I'm asking people all the time who are using it. Whether I know them or it's, people in passing who might use it a little bit or whatever. I'm like, more importantly, I want to know, why don't you want to use it? That's even more important. But then where are people getting stuck and all this kind of thing? So, um, putting the ability to do text entry, like all these things, these little incremental improvements. And then last was I had thought about last month. I'm like, man, should I make a desktop version? And I'm like, no, maybe that's just like, kind of a rabbit hole. Maybe I'm just going to make it because I can make it or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, so what it was Wednesday, Sunday, I had just been stewing on this and stewing on it and stewing on it. And I was really, it was really like eating at me before church. And I went to church, and during church, I was like, it kept popping back in my head. And the first thing I did when I got home was I started like riffing on what it would look like, because the infrastructure is already there.
Yeah.
It's just tying into it. And it was interesting the way I was able to do it in Claude Code, because most of the things I need to do at this point, I'm like, I can just do them because the
Easily. Yeah.
app's built. Um, I'm able to actually, this is kind of a trip. I'm able to have the mobile app and the web app in the same folder and make sure that it's making continuity between both apps,
Yeah.
which is that's a pain in the butt historically. So anyways, Sunday, I started fleshing this out by, probably Sunday night. I had like a very basic working version. But one of the things to let people in on kind of the mindset is like, I knew there was a barrier with mobile for this. Like, and you got to consider, okay, where's the market at for your product? Are you introducing a totally new concept? Are you putting something out in the market that is very well recognizable, and it's not going to take much of a learning curve? Well, I think I'd underestimated to some degree like the learning curve it would take. Not that the product's complicated, it's more like the confidence in a way. Hold on
Yeah.
one sec. Sorry, I have bug people here and my dogs are going nuts. Okay.
Oh, good.
So, um, so I was at first I had like this freemium model of the app, and I started thinking about, I'm like, who's paying for this currently? And I did my research and found actually people thought in some cases $50 a month was cheap for this app. And I'm like,
Okay.
okay, well, that's re-encouraging, or that's encouraging. So
Definitely.
I updated, and so it became a matter of like, okay, it's just attracting the right people. And I think sometimes people, you can miss that, right? You attract the wrong people for whatever reason, and they're unwilling to pay for your service. That doesn't mean your service isn't worth it. It may mean that you're just attracting the wrong person, right? So then I started looking at, I actually hard paywalled it, and then I messed around with the timing of when the paywall came over and stuff. And I actually started making money on it because it was putting people into a trial that they ended up paying for, instead of just letting everyone kind of in and convincing them to pay for it down the line.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went these two extremes, whereas like I pushed a lot of people in through paid and some organic in the early days, got a lot of usage data, but also figured out where, Facebook was kind of jacking me despite my targeting, and just the wrong kind of people getting in, and then just went totally opposite on the pendulum and said hard paywall and all this kind of stuff, all to realize that what I did with this desktop app is made that the primary motion. So in my mind, initially it was like, oh, just mobile or bust, right? And I'm
Hmm.
like, wait a second. So even last month, I launched a programmatic SEO directory. So it's 285,000 pages. That's
Yeah.
churches across the country. So it's a real resource. I invested money into getting that built, and again realizing that like I have this good organic traffic. All they need to do is click a button and they can do a journal entry, instead of saying, hey, go download this app, go through a
Yeah.
registration hoop. And so I'm sharing all that to say, like, you got to keep, for people listening, you got to keep iterating on and finding, like you said, there's just one little, you're just like maybe one tweak away or two tweaks away from something really taking off. And I think that's where people can really lose patience, because they go, man, I tried once, I tried twice, I'm getting rejected by the market. You're like, that's the game.
That is.
And and then you may say that and then go to apply to like 1,000 jobs and be like, you're okay with that, but not putting out your own idea. you know
Yeah.
like you can make it work if you just suffer through the little bit. I'm not saying money's not needed or important in that case, but you get
Yeah.
my point.
No, definitely. I think that I think you're hitting the nail on the head as far as sometimes we try to force that square peg into a round hole, thinking that everybody, our consumers think as us.
Mm.
And a lot of times that can happen. Like in our industry, it happens all the time. We'll have a coach that we're like, "Hey, you need to raise your prices," and they're like, "No, none of my people can pay. Like nobody would pay $500 a month for online fitness coaching." And it's like, "Are you saying you wouldn't spend $500 a month for fitness coaching? Because we know from all these other businesses that are charging $500 a month, we know that that's actually like pretty fair market rate." So they're like, "Well, I wouldn't pay it." And I'm like, okay. Well, also, you're in a fantastic shape and you don't need a coach.
Right.
But when this is life or death for them, if they don't get in shape, they might die,
Mm-hmm.
or they set a bad example for their kids and they set up, obesity through their family line, or they want this dream body and they would pay any amount of money to get to look like this in the mirror. That's worth a lot of money to a lot of people. Like that's a completely different thing. Like you can't think about your own pockets when pricing out your offer.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
the
and
same thing with
yeah.
with the features, right? One of the most valuable things that we did when launching this Check-ins Pro app that we did, of what I was telling you, I initially vibe coded it now, and we did a couple of private launches, is I didn't even think of it as being that crazy valuable from the beginning, but we promised 10 onboarding calls. So everyone that
Mm,
bought in got 10 weekly calls week after week with just me, which nobody really gets to get on calls with me anymore with how we've kind of grown and everything,
mm-hmm.
on the AR side of things. And those onboarding calls, at first it was just like, let me make sure you have your login and stuff like that. And then it was, okay, here's the things on our roadmap. Are these valuable to you or not? And then
Mhm.
they're giving us these crazy insights we wouldn't have thought, or us saying, hey, here's a feature that we're planning on building. What do you guys think? And everyone's kind of like, eh. And we're
Mm.
like, oh, well, we thought that was going to be like a aha, eyes wide open type of holy cow, you can do that. But they're like, leave it.
Hmm.
And some of the smallest tweaks that we've made that they've suggested have been the things that I'm getting like messages about of, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible. Thank you so much for doing formatting thing,"
Mhm.
right? Like adding
Mhm.
bullet points instead of a paragraph, like different, there's random little stuff.
Hmm.
So doing those calls, we've done way more than 10 at this point because I'm like, I'm getting so much value from doing these calls and hearing exactly how you guys want this built
Mm.
for directly from the customer base, from the early adopters, that I'm like, I'm not gonna let y'all out of these calls. And they feel extremely valued because their ideas are getting implemented on same week, like built same week. So that has been one of the biggest things I think we've done as a differentiator and as a community builder and retention builder and things like that is just building with them live on these calls before we launch to the public.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something really good, which is like a lot of times people don't buy because they don't understand the value, you know?
Yeah.
And I this really hit home for me because I'd been in a lot of companies where it's like, the value was already there. We were
Yeah.
just scaling the messaging or stuff like that. But so after I did my documentary, I sort of parlayed that into the opportunity to do grief commission paintings, right? So I just created this offering where you could sit with me in one-on-one sessions. It was a couple or one or two, and I learn about you and your story and translate that into an abstract painting that
Okay.
represented you and your lost person. And at first, I'm like, I've never, I'd sold some prints and a couple, other originals. I'm like, never, and probably for like hundreds of dollars, you know,
Yeah.
at the highest most. So I'm like, well, let's see where this could go. And I I I had to get really deep into the psychology of what that painting was doing, why this person was coming to me for it, all this kind of stuff. And so went from like basically zero to $5,000 a painting in a month and a half.
Wow.
And this was just through a process of getting them to really admit that they couldn't do it on their own. Not because I was manipulating them, just going like, why is this important? What are you going to accomplish? Like dream build with them, all this kind of stuff. But they bought because they saw the value in it. And then afterwards, they were like in tears looking at this painting that if I just said, hey, do you want an abstract painting to about you and the death of whoever? It would be like, no.
Yeah.
And it just a lot of light bulbs went off for me in that whole process of just how do you understand and communicate, or how do you communicate value, understand your buyer, which like, again, I like knew all these things in a different way, but to really, if you're starting your own thing, to really put your like sink your teeth into it so deep that it's just like you can really become an empathetic person in that moment versus just like high transaction or whatever.
Yeah.
So high volume
Agreed.
transaction.
100% agreed. Well, Steven, I've got so many more things that I want to talk to you about. So maybe I'm going to have to just, to get your number and start texting you about it. Cause I want to learn about all the stuff you've done from a fractional leadership perspective and churn and all those things that are so important in our space. But I know I've kept you kind of past my welcome here. So, where can people find more about Psalmlog and some of the things that you have going? Do you have social media accounts you want to plug? Like, how can people get with you?
Yeah, thanks. Psalmlog.com, psalmlog.com. You can go learn more about Psalmlog and, try a journal for free. And you actually get 3. So you just have to register beyond the first one. So go try that out if that interests you. If you want to watch the documentary, just look up The Art of Grieving. It's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV and a bunch of other places. And then I'm most active on LinkedIn. You'll find me on X and Instagram and mainly those as well. But LinkedIn's where I'm most active. But yeah,
Perfect.
I'm pretty responsive otherwise. So I don't live on social media in the same way I think, a lot of people do. I try to time slot it out there because otherwise I'm doing other things. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
No, I totally get it. Preston, I know I've kinda had you, overstay I've overstayed my welcome, I think, a little bit in terms of just your time. I know you're a super busy guy. Um, in terms of new interviews on the podcast is called By Any Means Necessary, so BAMcast, By Any Means Necessary, BAMN. So, I always ask in terms of new interview guests, like, what is your mission that you're going to accomplish by any means necessary?
yeah, getting 50 million people onto Psalmlog.
Okay. Awesome. And that's 50 million people that are being exposed to the word in a personalized manner, that maybe might have not reached it otherwise. And that's, yeah, that's incredible impact. I have no doubt to do that, man. So I appreciate you, Preston, just being on here and taking your time. I know you're a busy guy. I'm going to hit you up with some of my just selfish other questions that I want want answered. But yeah, man, this was incredible. So thank you so much for your time. Hope to have you on again.
Thanks, Baker.
All right. Thanks, buddy.